Welcome to Manchester Speedway. We've got a great celebration going on here today. Track closed in the late 1970s, but that hasn't kept a large group of people from coming out here, like myself, to revisit some of the memories of this great old speedway. Here we are on the back straight. There it is, leading into the very high banked turns 3 and 4. It's a beautiful day, and we've got some great stories to share about good old Manchester Speedway. Come along. So this would be, I believe, the first racetrack other than Checker Flag Speedway that I ever attended, and I was a race fan already since I was 2. Once I got here to Manchester, I was hooked, and there was no looking back for sure.
Jerry Braun and my dad and 3 other guys bought this property to build a speedway, and they came out to clear the brush. I think it was in '63, March. Started clearing the brush and then built a fire to burn the brush. Bill Brooks's car was here. It was a '58 Edsel. We all put our coats and boots and hats and stuff in the car. Started a fire, got out of control, burned 80 acres.
Oh my!
They only owned 60.
Incredible, what a start.
And what a way to start. But yeah, burned up Bill's car along with it.
The Edsel went up?
Yeah, Edsel went up.
Oh my gosh.
All our boots and coats and hats. And that's actually the first work that was done here to start the track. And then the railroad ties up there for the wall
down here,
where actually came from up right uptown in Manchester.
Yeah.
And they, right where the fire barn in Manchester stuff is, right down through there, they'd already pulled the tracks and stuff up, and the railroad ties were there, and Burrow went and bought them off
Just
the railroad.
what you want. Build a stock car track.
Wall. And Burrow pretty much bought the others out the first year because they all wanted to drive. And that's actually how the racetrack got started. And Burrow pretty much ran it for several years afterwards, very successful with it. A lot of the neighbors complained, you know, like normal. You got a lot of the noise and the dirt, the dust on the road and stuff.
Oh, we know all those stories. But this one started with a 60-acre fire. Now that's extra impressive.
That was quite a way to start. And then years later, well, my dad drove until a couple years before he passed away, like 67. He died in 69, but he drove up to like 67. We bought a house across the road here from the track. And I stayed interested in it. I'd come every race. I came every race until I got drafted. And then I came back and I helped Jim Martin, who came back and ran it like I think about 73 or 74, somewhere in there. He came and promoted it one year, and I helped him run it. I was a pit steward. We ran the track, and it was an oil track back then. Totally oil track. Right. But not like the tracks now, but EPA don't let you do that anymore. But we'd run the track in, and I got a lot of laps running the track in, running that oil in. And then after that, I bought a car from Jim Martin, who I helped get this started from, and I started racing here. So me and my dad both raced here. I don't know if there's any other father-sons that did that or not.
That's very cool. Yeah.
But I know we both, he ran the first races, I ran the last ones.
Yeah.
But it was, there's a lot of history in here. You ask some of the people around here that are here today, and everybody used to come out here, and it's phenomenal how many of the townspeople got interested once the track got built. There was several drivers from Manchester. They'd never done anything with auto racing that had cars. There was Willie Frey, Roy Pratt, several of them. There was Neil Baggett, Jim Martin, naturally. Bill Underwood owned a car. Jim Tyndall bought one off of my dad. Just several people from town that got involved in it and that drove up here. It was a great track.
And as you see, look at here, and it closed in what year? 70-something?
77, I think, was the last year of actual operation.
Okay.
It may have closed in 76, because I don't remember, after I got married in 76, I don't remember running here after that. But,
so you think this, though, it closed in 1977, and here we are today in 2019 on this beautiful Saturday, and look at all the interest and all the people that are here. It's incredible.
And a lot of these people work here for it.
That's great.
Most of them.
I'm Sharon Kopke.
and my husband Bill Kopke. We came up from Florida for Paul's reunion at the racetrack here. My husband raced here for...
Well, from 62 to 74.
Fantastic.
Yep. Our kids were raised in those bleachers over here.
I know what that's about, yeah.
Yep. And all three of them have been involved in racing ever since, so in one form or another. They all are involved in that. He, at one point in time, broke both his knees coming home from work on his way to the track.
Yes.
To break in a new motor in George Racy's race car, number 16.
So he was in cast afterwards from the groin to the ankle.
Mm-hmm. And I bet I know where this is going.
When the cast came off, the doctor said no racing,
yeah.
And Bill said, I don't know, that's not going to work. His head mechanic, his name was Ron Moore. Okay, so therefore Ron Moore for a long time drove the race car, but he still stayed in the pits. Dad was Ron Moore for quite a while, running the car.
Nice.
Actually, when I went back to see the doctor on my checkups and everything, he says, amazingly, your knee is healing very fast. And he says, I don't understand it. And I said, well, it's therapy. But I didn't elaborate
specify
any
what that
farther with him. But come to find out, my knee was resting against the roll bar on the right-hand side of the car, and the vibration of the car stimulated the blood and made it heal faster.
Incredible.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah. This was a big part of our life because he wasn't into racing when we first got married. We come up to watch somebody else, and from...
Yeah, your girlfriend in Dundee, Michigan.
Yep, her husband.
Her husband was building a race car. And we went down to visit him, and it snowballed from there. The first night he brought the car to the track, I sit in the grandstands. And I said, this ain't gonna get it. So the next week we come, I went down in the pits, and the third week I was building the car.
Yep.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
And it's
Now,
been ever since.
It goes a little farther. My wife we was building the car, and my wife was 9 months pregnant, a couple weeks overdue, and I'm welding on it, had her hold a piece, sent her into labor.
I was holding two pieces of roll bar together.
Right.
Yeah. And I got a shock.
And you felt the power.
I got a shock.
She got the power. She won the feature.
That's
So
an incredible
anyhow,
story.
that got us into racing, and we raced here, like I say, from 62 to 74, the last year that I remember running out here. And I run the grader at the track and did the track prep here for 2 years for Joe. And he gave me a Blazer, and he bought a brand new one. And for 2 years, I worked the track and set track records.
And our kids, our two oldest kids, learned how to drive on this racetrack because they had to work the track in. They had the old junk cars, and they went around and around and around and around.
Yeah.
To work the
Regular
track
street cars with wide tires on it, I'd sneak up behind them and I'd spin them off. You know,
You're talking 8 and 10-year-olds.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they would
And then
love it.
When we were working the track, our 8-year-old daughter, Jeanette, who now lives in Oklahoma, she popped the popcorn. She was the official popcorn popper.
in the building over here
Family
in Pitt.
Fair.
Yep.
Yeah, right there.
So we've been around here for a while.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for all the information. That's great.
Yep.
So Zeke and Paul, and they're going to tell us our first stories about Manchester Speedway. Take it away, Zeke, and tell us about this fantastic sign that you have rescued and restored behind you.
Well, we was cutting brush out here one day, and me and Paul were going home. Paul goes, "Yeah, come here and look at this sign." So we're looking at it, and he goes, "Well, if you don't take it home and fix it, I will." And I go, "Well, okay." So I picked up the pieces and took it home. It took me 2 weeks to clean the old glue off. It was like in 10 pieces. And me and Paul was originally talking about just gluing it on a piece of new plywood, and I got looking at it. I'm going, this is the original sign from on top of the ticket counter out front, and I can't glue this on a piece of plywood. It's got to be a lighted sign. So I cleaned all the pieces up and glued it onto a piece of plexiglass, and I actually had to make a little tiny piece in the middle that was missing. So
And you can't even tell. It's
yeah,
perfect.
it took me like 2 weeks to do it, and it turned out pretty good. Now we got it in Paulie's rec room downstairs. It's one of his better additions to the party room.
It's a great conversation starter too, you know, especially for people that've never been there. And you tell them the story about it and how they got it and where it come from, and it's pretty awesome.
I love that part Zeke was telling me about finding it up the hill there in all kinds of pieces.
Leaning next to the homeowner's house.
Yeah.
And it's been out there for years, you know, and I've been eyeballing it for quite a long time.
I bet.
And finally, I asked him one day if I took it home. He said, well, I said, if I take it home and fix it, we take it home and fix it, it's going to stay in my house. And he said, not a problem. So we got it together. It's pretty cool, pretty cool. My dad ran out here, and he was the last track champion out here.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was real awesome.
And your dad?
Mel Sroufe.
Mel Sroufe.
Yeah, right. Drove 50 car, number 50. Fantastic. Well, that was his last car, and then he had the 19, and he drove for a lot of other people
too. The 120.
Yeah, and the 112 for Underwoods. He drove a lot of cars. Yeah. And you remember the car him and Al had? Said Mel and Al on the side. Yeah. They'd bring that damn thing here, and if nobody asked Dad to drive their car, my father would say, well, Al, I'm driving this one. You want to see an old man pout like a little babe, like a little kid? He would sit on the backside of that trailer with his head down, slamming beers. He must have drank or smoked 3 packs of Pall Malls at a night. But he would cry and pout, and oh my God, he was so upset. And Dad would just go, well, that's the way it works. I don't drive somebody's, I drive ours, okay.
Okay, I'm Mike. Many years ago, I helped Verl part-time, sporadically out here at the racetrack. And my favorite racetrack story was I was helping him park cars one night, and a lot of people wanted to park on the far south end of the parking lot because it was just easier getting out when the races were over. This car comes in. It was an older Pontiac, if I'm remembering right. And these guys had already started their partying for the evening. Well, this guy he just opened a beer, I guess. In fact, I remember distinctly it was a Ham's beer when he dropped it. This guy opened his beer, dropped it, opened the door to try to grab the beer, and he fell out of the car, literally fell out of the car. So I'm stopping traffic so nobody runs over him, and he's sitting there sitting on the ground saying, I got my beer.
And that started a great night at the races for him,
yes,
right?
And that was in about 1965, something like that.
Non-union.
Yeah.
So I just went over to Michigan Cat. Finished up.
Where that cluster of trees is right there used to be the pond. So why that is of significance is that here we are, it's feature time, 1965, and Ron Ford, driving the number 25 Junior Coupe, is here from Checker Flag. He's here with the Checker Flag drivers, and it's feature time. And we, my parents and myself, are right up here to the left, up in the grandstands. And at somewhere right about midpoint on that front straightaway, Ron suddenly veers hard to the right. And when Ron goes right, he ends up in there, which was a pond. And he got in there deep. That thing was up about in at least 3 feet of water, 2.5, 3 feet of water, halfway up the numbers at least on the side of the car. And then what I remember next is that they didn't throw the yellow flag. So the race continues on, and we're all up there in the grandstands watching Ron climb out of the car in the pond. So he got up onto the top of the car, and he's sitting there and he's holding his hand over his face. And what I remember quite vividly was the blood is running down his uniform and it's kind of puddling on top of the car. So myself and all of the Canadian contingent are up there hollering to the flag stand to throw the yellow, throw the red to get him out of there, which they eventually did, quite thankfully. And I got to discuss that story with Ron at his daughter's wedding many years later, which was a real treat. But this is where all that happened.
My name is Joe Weinhardt. My brother raced here for quite a few years, John Weinhardt, and he got his first rollover trophy here at Manchester Speedway. We'd race here every Friday night and then go to Butler every Saturday night.
Very cool, yeah.
And we had a lot of fun.
My name's Doug Frey, and my Uncle Verl owned Manchester Speedway, and right here we're going in corner 1, and I can remember the night Ed Haig, our driver, got barred for rough driving for a week, and he come in, drove up the drive to go to the stands, and pulled off on the drive and sat there with his case of beer and yelled at the drivers all night and sat and drank the beer. But it was right here, first corner, going into the second corner. He sat right up on the drive that you really can't see and parked his car and sat there and yelled at everybody all night.
That is a fantastic memory.
So,
what year would you guess that would be?
I would guess that was about 66 maybe.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
67. I remember he drove the 89 car, so I think that was 66, 67.